I think it's about time we admit that there is one deck in Pokemon TCGP that is far too strong, and it's about to get stronger as its only serious competitor, Pikachu EX, has been knocked down thanks to new mythical jungle cards designed to counter it. And the deck I'm talking about is none other than Mewtwo EX and Gardevoir. When it comes to just standard win rates, the Mewtwo EX deck isn't really that amazing. It does have a positive win rate, but there are very few decks that have a positive win rate. Before Mythical Jungle came into play, the only decks that had positive win rates was Mewtwo, Pikachu, Charizard, Articuno, and Starmie. And the reason the other decks didn't have a positive win rate was because they had certain matchups that dropped their deck down to a 17-20% win rate, which drastically reduced that average win rate into a negative below 50%. And it's without a doubt Pikachu EX was the domineering deck before Mythical Jungle. Pikachu and Zapdos EX, Pikachu EX and Electrode, Pikachu EX and Zebstrika, they were dominating most battles, with only a few matchups dropping below 40% win rate. Just looking at these matchup win rates by user OA, we can clearly see that Charizard, Moltres, Articuno, and Starmie did have some really strong matchups, but you can see a fair few of them where they really drop. So still good enough to stay above 50%, but what's the point in running it if you've got Pikachu that is just objectively better against all win rates? The only outlier here is Mewtwo EX and Gardevoir. Yeah, if somebody's going to be running Arbok Weezing, which is very rare by the way, you're barely going to win. And there are a lot of matchups that drop below 50%. But all of those are against Pikachu EX, which is a much faster deck than Mewtwo, and it's a perfect counter to it. The only problem is that Pikachu was really only the perfect counter to Mewtwo EX decks. Yep, sure, Charizard and Moltres had a good go. Articuno and Starmie usually win if you get a good Misty flip. But with Moltres and Misty, they all just boil down to RNG. Pikachu was objectively better without having to rely on any of that. And now, thanks to Mythical Island, there are so many cards that shut this deck down. Celebi EX, Taurus, even Golem, who can just knock out a 120 HP EX card. And now, after all that destruction, the only deck to still stand is Mewtwo and Gardevoir. There are very little new introduced decks that really counter it well. Yeah, loads of people are going crazy about Celebi EX and Superior. Sure, it's a good deck, it deals a ton of damage, and you can set it up pretty quickly. And even after all that fuss, it's not guaranteed you're going to knock out the opponent with coin flips. The reason Mewtwo EX does so well is because it's a guaranteed 150 damage each turn when you have your Gardevoir up. And with there being very little cards that mess around with your bench, it's really hard to shut down an opponent that's building up to a Gardevoir. And what am I even talking about? They've literally introduced cards that just make Mewtwo EX decks even better. And that one new card they introduced to help shut down Celebi EX decks isn't even from Mythical Jungle. It's Jinx, a basic Pokemon that can execute the move Psychic. And if you guys haven't figured it out yet, Psychic does work alongside Superior's ability. So for every 2 grass energy that gets put on a Pokemon thanks to Superior, Psychic does double that damage too. And it gets even better. You've got Mythical Slab if you want to thin down the deck even faster. When you're running a deck that has almost 50% Psychic Pokemon in it, Mythical Slab has a very good chance of pulling an extra card from your deck. There's another card that will be coming into the Mewtwo EX decks as well, that being Mew EX and its Geome hacking. I don't personally want to be running that myself. The whole point of this video is to talk about how secure the damage output is for Mewtwo EX decks. Mew EX could add that twist to the gameplay that you need, but I personally like playing knowing what type of damage I'll be dealing in the next 2 to 3 turns. So for me personally, I think Jinx is the best of the 3. Simply because it's a high damage dealer that can counter Celebi and also serve as a sponge to stall until your Mewtwo EX. So the deck I'll be talking about today consists of 1 Baby Mewtwo, 2 Mewtwo EXs, 2 Gardevoirs, 2 Kalias, 2 Roltzes, 1 Jinx, 2 Professor's Research, 2 Pokeballs, 2 X-Speeds, 2 Potions, 1 Red card and 1 Sabrina. However, if you want to swap the red card out for a Giovanni or a second Sabrina, that works too. But the question on everyone's lips is, does this deck outperform the infamous Celebi and Superior deck? And the answer is, it's a very close 50-50, if not a little bit more in favour to Celebi EX. It has pretty high damage dealing stallers like Delmise or Lilligant if you don't have that card. Whereas when you're using Baby Mewtwo, it's very situational that you'd ever use Power Blast on it. And as for Ralts and Kalia, their damage isn't very high itself. And as for Jinx, it is the highest damage dealing staller you have. But again, it really relies on how much energy the opponent has. Whereas the Celebi and Superior deck has Erica for that extra sustain, something that Mewtwo EX and Gardevoir doesn't have. But when we start looking at other matchups, the story starts changing. Celebi EX has a very similar playstyle to Mewtwo EX. But with the rise of Charizard and Arcane EX decks, which has started to rise in win rank before Mythical Island, many players are still going to be running that deck, and of course, Celebi being weak to fire, it's going to be a really tough matchup. And that's where Mewtwo and Gardevoir actually kind of succeeds, because nobody's really running dark decks at the moment. There's not really very good synergy there. So you don't have to worry about going against tight matchups. Something that literally throws decks down to 40-30% win rates. And this is where it brings us back to the per matchup win rates. Whilst we don't have the data just yet from Mythical Island, just compare how successful Pikachu EX decks were to the Mewtwo one. A lot more higher percentage win rates. Those stats are certainly going to go down now that the new cards have come out that specifically counter Pikachu. There hasn't really been a lot of cards developed to counter Mewtwo EX yet, and so I would actually see some of those percentages rise because people are moving away from Pikachu EX decks and trying something different. But the best thing about this Mewtwo Gardevoir EX deck is that it's pretty flat 50% across the board on most matchups. Meaning it went from a really good stable situation to a really excellent stable situation. So whilst Celebi is probably going to get its guaranteed 10 coin flips when it's going against Mewtwo EX, it might not be so lucky against more faster paced decks. And that's where the RNG comes in. Are you going to deal that 100 damage necessarily in the early game because of a bad pull? With Mewtwo EX, you're not really going to be using Mewtwo to deal damage in the early game. And if you have to put him into the active spot, doesn't matter. He's got way more HP and can tank a good amount of shots. But at the end of the day, you're going to find any opportunity to put him back on the bench, get him to that 4 energy late game, and then just sweep from there. Right now, Mewtwo EX decks only have to worry about Charizard plus Moltres or Charizard plus Arcanine. Besides that, it's looking good across the board, providing less and less people utilize Pikachu EX decks. I've played about 50 games since Mythical Island came out, and in my own personal opinions, I have seen more and more people just fall back to Mewtwo decks. We've already got the cards, a lot of people are still collecting Mythical Island cards, and as the meta changes, Mewtwo EX does have a fair few cards in its arsenal that it can swap out with its current deck. With the cards that we discussed earlier, Mythical Slab, Jinx, and of course, maybe Mew EX. It all depends on how the meta will change in the next couple of weeks. So to conclude, Mewtwo EX and Gardevoir deck fans, if you're worried that Celebi is going to steal the spotlight, I'd say it'll take a little bit of it, but you've not really got much to worry about. If anything, this deck is stronger than ever, and I'd be very surprised if the new set in January doesn't push this deck down a few tiers. Because right now, Mewtwo EX is probably one of the best decks you could be running as of right now. I thought I'd end this video just by opening 10 packs to see what we get in Mythical Island. I haven't opened too many of these packs, but we'll just drop in 10 right now. Hopefully we'll get something good. Terrible start, but that's fine. Nice, nice. It's good to see a lot of new cards. Haven't seen that in a while. Okay. Nothing amazing there. Mythical Slab, that's nice. I wanted to use that. Mew. Nice. Rapidash. Love the Rapidash artwork. Man, we are not getting good stuff here. Pikachu, Budding Expeditioner. Nice. Pack 6. Eevee. Are we going to get anything? What? Not one single EX so far. Surpluff, Magmar. You've got to be jigged. We're on 8 now. Eevee. Delmise. Bro. Rapidash. Are you actually joking me? Thank you. At least we got one okay card. Not a single EX? Bro. Not a single EX. Not a single full art. We got Superior, which is just a free diamond. Bro.